Well, welcome to this session on the Holy Spirit for the world today. I'm going to be dealing with this subject in three modules. The first is a theological reflection. The second is more personal. And the third will be questions and answers. So my first topic is that pneumatology, the study of the work of the Holy Spirit in our time, is theology for this generation. I know it's provocative and exaggerated, but there is a kernel of truth in there. Because the Spirit of God is moving worldwide. When I came to an understanding of the work of the Spirit of God over 40 years ago, there were about 60-odd million people worldwide who would regard themselves as being of that branch of the church, being filled with the Spirit. There are now 650 million, 10 times. And the Pew Research has said that it's soon going to be 1 billion. So the question for us is, what is it that has seen this awakening of pneumatology, awakening of the interests of the Spirit of God in our time? He is moving worldwide, not only in the church, but in the worlds of culture and work. There is an intensely practical and incredibly important dimension that we need to grasp of the Spirit working in the world, for the world, not just in the church, for the church, which is so often thought to be the case, because the world throbs with a kind of feverish activity, and it's an undirected spiritual longing. And it seems to me that at this time, particularly in this time of lockdown, the one part that has been underestimated, underplayed, and in my view has not been named, is the spiritual hunger of the nations of the world, including our own. There is a longing for a spirituality that would enable people to live through the harshness of this pandemic that has hit us, the financial consequences, the health consequences, and people dying, the governmental and political consequences have all been shown on our television screens regularly. But we need to name a desire to see a spirituality grow in every aspect of our national life. I ask myself the question, why do we as a church make so little headway in the world? Is it the message? Is it the messenger? Or is it the medium? Because a generation is now emerging, hence my title, that intuits, that emphasizes, empathizes, bonds with experience, feels outside normal understanding of the rational. It's longing for the Spirit of God. And increasingly, there seems to be an inability to deal with the nature of feelings. And if I would say one needs to feel the Holy Spirit in the world today. If you want to feel peace or power or joy, they're not abstract concepts. I know that there's a generation that is narcissistic. It seems to me there are three things that they look for when listening to words about spirituality. The first is the experience of the person talking to me authentic? The second, will it meet my needs? And the third, will it change my life? Now, I know that may sound like a narcissistic group, but an authentic pneumatology should be the gift of the church to the world, such that we can meet the experiences of people in the world and reinterpret them for the world. I'm convinced that the Spirit for the world is what we are called to be working for. to understand the work of the Holy Spirit in our culture, in our workplace, in our business dealings. Yes, in Genesis, of course, it was created ex nihilo, and yet in the beginning, the Spirit hovered over the world. The Spirit was giving life, the perfecting cause that Basil spoke of. The Spirit helps the world to go on being and becoming that which God called us into being. We live in the middle of this pandemic crisis when it is, globally, every institution you can imagine is groaning. If ever there were a picture of the Spirit in Romans chapter 8, groaning with creation, I see it now. He is not some distant God, but is with us, groaning to see the fulfillment of how we are able to see change coming. The world is groaning, and the Spirit of God is groaning. And the Spirit of God is the arrow bone, as Paul teaches us in Ephesians. He is the down payment, a wonderful commercial term that Paul uses, knowing that there will be a certainty. And this groaning will, in my view, lead to a reassessment of what spirituality is all about. Why do we want to see the Spirit of God working in our lives? Because we want to see a flourishing society, a culture in our workplaces. We want to see a way in which we can care for the environment around us, how we spend time on our health, what motivates us to look after the marginalized, the poor, the needy. Where does that imagination come from? In John chapter 3, verse 8, there's a classic postmodern parable for us. The wind blows from an unexpected place in unpredictable ways. It blows in economics, in business, and in other disciplines, as well as in our churches, and we see his actions. We follow her and draw others into this agenda of the world. When we're seeing where is the discerning power now to see and hear, because the Spirit of God is moving in all our lives, even in lockdown. Daniel Hardy, writing in The Spirit for the World Today, said, "For centuries, Christians have tended to divorce their attention to the character and purposes of God from other spheres in which the vitality of God is manifest. The connection between God's ways and the world in which they are found must be restored. That is the fundamental task of theology in our time." And I couldn't believe that more. We must be there in the world. This is a pneumatology for today's world. Explaining, arguing, interacting, witnessing, drawing alongside commentators, opinion formers, television talk show hosts to advance this eclectic engagement with the world, validating the authentic experiences that God, through his Spirit, wants to be giving to us in and through the world. He inspires. Right from Genesis, he inspires the world. He breathes on the world. And all the way through, we see the continuing action of the Spirit of God coming on people, of the Spirit of God touching people throughout the whole of the Old Testament, right the way through the book of Revelation. God is at work in the world, creating, strengthening the Spirit in the world. For me, his work is to strengthen faith in the world for the world. This is not just some ecstatic experience, but it is an important realization that there is something distinctive. Our pneumatology helps us to see that we are both sinner and justified. And therefore I share with the person working in the desk next to me a common, if not a comfortable, status of sinner. And yet I come alongside her in a more distinctive way, showing that we share a common humanity, but also a directional bias. We have been imprinted by the Spirit of the living God in order to impress in the world the ways of the Spirit. I believe the Spirit is at work today in our churches, in our workplaces, in the gym, in our families, in our relationships, in our business dealings, our universities. But the task is to see these diffused and lesser lights infused with an experience of the new Pentecost. For if we wish to see our nation come to faith and our society transformed, it will only happen if ordinary men and women up and down the country become so captivated by the love of God that has been poured into our hearts by the Spirit that has been given to us, that nothing and no one can stop them from sharing these experiences, and so building the sphere of God's goodness in the world today. And this is particularly the case as we reflect in the lockdown on what the Spirit of God is saying to us individually and also in the churches, but more importantly, to have new discerning eyes to see what he is doing in the world around us.